Alright, let's do this. This is Coffee and Carnifexes, the pilot episode. I got something percolating. And welcome in. My name's Kyle, or Kyle on Coffee. So this is my first episode here. I've been playing around with doing like a weekly Warhammer video or series or podcast or episodes, whatever you want to refer to it as. It's going to be kind of like hobby updates, maybe talk about some of the news, discuss after the fact some of the games I've played or tournament games I've played in, maybe some of the news coming up and the releases that are coming out, and maybe some random topics here and there. Maybe things like tournament etiquette, slow play, maybe maybe some other things here and there, maybe random things. Do that traditional podcast thing I feel like at this time here. And sorry, this is kind of raw. I don't like doing like a script. I kind of like it being more like a conversation. I might have some like bullet points that I go through. But I just try and go like that. I'd rather be more like a conversation. And sorry about any loud noises in the background. I have some birds, and they like to be heard every so often. And I can't really do too much about that, unfortunately, here. I did throw out some other names besides Coffee and Carnifexes, which I feel like fits really the alliteration. I did play around with doing Veteran the Long Hobby. So this is a really good Chaos reference. Chaos was my first army too, so it's kind of a good one. I just don't want, but I don't know. I just don't want people to assume that maybe I was a veteran or misunderstand it. I have to explain that, or maybe they want to get the Chaos reference as well here. I do not want this to be just Tyranids though. I mean, Tyranids is my primary army though, but you gotta embrace like the hobby fully. There's more than just my faction out there, so I like to talk about and learn about all of it, honestly. Um, I'm a very small content creator. I haven't done much on YouTube in a very long time. I have like one video that people still seem to watch every so often. It's a little tutorial I did on how to do a death counter, which has helped some people. Some people still got confused, but hey, I helped some. That's the best we could hope for, I guess. I used to stream quite a bit. I do stream still here and there. I paint some miniatures on Twitch. I also play some games. I used to stream a lot more though. I was starting to get a little bit of momentum a couple years ago as a small streamer. Unfortunately, life kind of hit. My mom was diagnosed with a rare form of cancer. I lost her 9 months later. In the aftermath of like dealing with life and grief and moving and kind of figuring out my new normal after all of that, I part of my grief path was getting back in old hobbies. I hadn't played 40K in many years. I went from 6th edition till now without actually playing. Um, so yeah, and I do like streaming. I do like content creating. I wish I could play actual games of 40K on the tabletop on stream. I'm not in a position to do anything like that yet here. But maybe someday here we'll get there and we can play some actual 40K on stream, and that'd be freaking amazing, honestly. For the time being, we can at least talk about it. Figure, I've been in this hobby for almost 25 years. I have like a weird and different and unique insight on it. I've never been one to always go with the meta. Um, I'm one of those people that likes to find other ways besides the meta. You need to understand the meta, but you also need to, I don't know, find your own way and enjoyment and fun in the game too here. But a little of my history with Warhammer, that I started in 3rd edition. I started really freaking young. I was like 12 to 14, somewhere in that range. It's also how I met a lot of my good buddies in middle school and high school. That's like how we met our friend group. Was they were looking at a Warhammer rulebook in school, and we're like, hey, we've been checking that out online, like, blah blah blah. That's how we all met because of that. And then, we all eventually got some miniatures, which when you're that young, it's kind of hard. We don't have jobs yet, and it's based on allowances or your parents being gracious and getting you some stuff for your birthday or holidays. So we used to have Warhammer parties when we were really young, where you'd all get together at someone's house, take over a kitchen table or a big table, and or a floor, and everyone bring what models they had. We'd all throw it down into a big mega battle, loosely good guys versus bad guys, and used to usually be Space Marines and Eldar versus all the rest. And we just throw down whatever we had, you know. It was a little different than 3rd edition. I think our buddy that was playing Tyranids at the time had a 2nd edition codex when we first started playing. So yeah, we didn't understand all those weird nuances or why his, characters, creatures had like way different stat lines on their weapons than the rest of us, or why a Carnifex had a 2+ save on 2d6, which didn't make sense. So we treated Snake Eyes as him failing. That Carnifex soloed armies. Let me just say, because we didn't know what we were doing. It was so much fun though. We had a blast with it. It used to just feel like, which one of your Space Marine friends could take the most last cannons for a while. We kind of, so we got a little bit older. We kind of backed out of that as we like graduated high school or got more into high school. And then we had like switched to Halo parties instead. And then me and a buddy of mine when I was in college, we got into fantasy actually. So I started with a dwarf army in fantasy. We started playing at our local game shop then. We started playing in tournaments. There was a bigger fantasy following than 40K at our local game shop at the time. That switched very quickly. We had like a really big LGS, like local game shop tournament happen where like all of a sudden there was like 30 people there, and they usually only had like 8 to 12. All of a sudden there's like 30. And a really good turnout, and then all of a sudden like the fantasy scene there just died right after that. I don't know what the heck happened. It just like the fantasy players stopped showing up after that. So much to my good friend's delight, I started switching into getting 4K models as well. So I started with Orcs in fourth edition, and then after doing like a escalation league and doing some local game shop tournaments and playing quite a bit with Orcs, I ended up switching to Tyranids either like right before fifth edition or right at the start of fifth edition. I can't remember now. It's been so freaking long. But most of my competitive play was 5th edition at the time. I did some in 6th edition as well. It was mostly my local game shops tournaments that we go to. We did go to Du Bois GT in Rochester, New York. We would do that every year. We did that quite a few times. One of the years I did go into my final game in the top 10 and didn't realize it. That was like the best I've ever done. Like something like that. I won like local little tournaments before, but something big. I didn't realize that going into it. I looked at the score sheet for like the fourth round, and I'm like in the like eighth or something. I'm like, what the heck? I'm like, had I beat that guy, I might have placed because I think he took third best general or something. The guy that I lost to, I was like, what the heck? So that was really cool. GT. That was my first like big tournament experience. They did something that was really controversial to some people at the time. They did a comp score, which was like composition score because fifth edition, sixth edition, probably fourth edition. Very transport spam heavy, Razorback spam heavy. Then when we got into sixth edition, flyer spam heavy, and still Rhino and Razorback spam heavy. So they implemented comp scoring, which gave you a separate score based on the composition of your army. So if you took duplicates, this is back when there's force organization charts. If you took duplicates of elite units or heavies or fast attacks or HQs, you got docked points. If you took more than two of the same troop choice, you got docked points. Like if they didn't have different loadouts. But you could take different elites with different loadouts and everything. So they try to encourage you to use a more diverse army than most people were playing at the time. So some people are like, this isn't competitive. But I would argue that you could have redundancy across your army list by having a variety of models, not just by spamming the same model over and over, even though that's the easy route. But at the time, some range model or armies had smaller ranges. It didn't have all the options either, so it's a thing. And some of those armies still don't have the ranges to make that work really well. But same issues many years later. Anyways, but I played some in 6th edition, and I ended up leaving the hobby entirely in 6th edition. I think it was like when 7th was announced, because 6th edition was such a short-lived edition. I just got really fed up. I think it was like during all their weird copyright name change acquisitions and all that. I think it was like after like the second or third big price hike. Then we started, and prices are more now. But at the time, we went from like $35 boxes to like 50 and 55 and $60 boxes really freaking fast. Like it was insane. I think I was like, I was going through some other stuff at the time too in life, and so I ended up selling off basically all my Warhammer stuff except for one Trigon. I had like 6 or 7 thousand points of painted Tyranids at the time. My paint scheme was pretty basic though. It was just some flat colors, some wash of shades, a couple layers of dry brushing, and that was it. They looked pretty good. Don't get me wrong, I got a lot of compliments on them, but it was really basic. To be the equivalent to like slap chopping almost nowadays, I feel like here. Um, but I eventually got back into just hobbying and painting models when the Light of Lartharion model came out. I think that's what it's called. for Age of Sigmar. It was just really cool, like the Hollow Soldier kind of looked like Artorias from Dark Souls. I'm like, man, I kind of feel like painting now. So I got that model, got back into painting a little bit. Was watching a lot of videos on painting and stuff at the time. Trying to learn to layer a little bit. Acquired a little bit of hobby supplies. Buy like some models here and there that I thought were really cool, just for like the intention of painting them, not playing at all, actually. I think it was like during ninth edition, I went to a game shop to get a model and was talking to it was a corporate DW store. I was talking about like, why I left in the past, stopped playing, and like he was telling me about how much the company changed by the time ninth edition was out. And how it was like getting bigger and bigger, and I think it was like right after the lockdowns and everything were ending too. Um, this game was expanding pretty well. The corporate change was a little bit different. They were actually updating and supporting the game regularly. It was a different GW than when I left, so I was kind of intrigued. But then, like I said, life had happened. I eventually moved to Texas here. I've been here for like 2 years. So right after my mother passed. So that's, what was it like? Not this past holiday season, but holiday season before. Um, I had bought the what was it, the Tyranid holiday box, and that's kind of what got me started. But this game's changed quite a bit since sixth edition. Some of it stayed the same, don't get me wrong. But the game's, as a whole, it seems a lot faster, a little bit more action-packed. There's a lot less castling, it seems. Range armies aren't just sitting back. It seems like there's a lot less transport spam. I'm sure the meta could vary from place to place, but I'm seeing a lot less of that. I don't see a ton of flyer spam because flyers don't seem to be as broken as they used to, or even that great in a lot of cases. Plus, vehicles having toughness nowadays makes me fear vehicles a lot less. Vehicles used to have a whole separate system for how you would damage and destroy them than everything else in the game. So now when they have a toughness and a save, and it's the same as everything else, it's great. There's no weird shenanigans. Granted, monsters and vehicles, we kind of get the shaft on terrain, but it's a whole different discussion. Which is a weird change to the game too. There used to be a lot of area terrain and cover. Um, Area terrain used to give cover of like a 4+ save. Now cover just adds 1 to your save. So that's really different to me too. It's really weird. Plus all the walls and the high density of terrain that's encouraged now, it's great. It's weird to get used to. Plus the table size got smaller. Um, which is a weird thing to talk about. It used to be a 4x8 or 4x6. That's what we used to play on. Now it's like what, 44 by like, I think by 5 foot now. That's really weird. It throws me off, but like it's good though because it kind of encouraged people to castle. I think the new mission structures, with usually having 5 primary missions plus the rotating secondary missions, which is a huge change. Missions used to not be like that. You used to have objective markers you'd place. I think you'd rotate with your opponent. I don't remember if they had set places or some had to be in your deployment zone, some had to be no man's land type thing. And then like you'd have like one secondary mission during that whole game. You wouldn't have like drawn ones. It'd be like, oh, for each unit you destroy, you gain 2 extra victory points or something for your secondary type thing. Um, but back in the day too, tailing your opponent was instant victory. So I feel that's what a lot of people were going for more so in fifth edition for the most part back then, and then instead of like trying to table, or they would try and table you over going for the mission sometimes. Where if you couldn't table them yourself, playing the mission was to your advantage and trying to survive. Between your army, if you were a melee focused army, that was really hard back then when everyone castled, so um, Warhammer's also way more well known nowadays. It seems way more popular. There's way more game shops than ever. There seems to be way more events, way more coverage, way more updates than ever before, and it's absolutely fantastic. Like the secret level episode is amazing. As much as I don't really like Space Marines that much, it is so good. I've watched it multiple times. And even just some of the shorts and the fan made stuff out there, the 100 plus community, all that. Like, there's a lot of good stuff out there for it. Don't get me wrong, I saw some gripes about some things, like the price. What else too? Like in this edition too, command points. Oh my god. That is the biggest learning curve for me coming to this edition, is command points. When to use them, when not to use them, which one should I favor, you know, or like having like, a plan when I go into the game, same with my deployment nowadays, but that's another discussion too. It's like, all right, I need to make sure I have CP for this. Do I want to use it for this reroll? Do I always want to use it for giving my monsters feel no pain at the right time? Blah, 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 blah. Do I want to save it for 5 plus criticals instead? Do I want to mix? What I've noticed, though, Tyranids have pretty good CP management compared to some other factions, too, though, I've noticed. Because the Hive Tyrant's amazing. But again, too, like, I moved on to rebuild my Tyranids. I did consider building Chaos at first, just because it was my very original army way back in the day. A Chaos army still might happen. We'll see here. I need to finish the Tyranids first, and a buddy of mine's gonna talk to me about me acquiring his at some point. Just because he wants to sell off some of his stuff here, so we'll see what happens here if I end up doing with that. Give me a whole nother project to work on. But about the Tyranids, I think the models are awesome. What little lore they have, I think, is really cool. I wish they had more. I might actually read a Warhammer novel at some point if there's more Tyranid involvement, so there's just being an enemy here and there. But that's okay. It's okay being the more monstrous and mysterious and less lore known species, I guess, when you care more about the gameplay and just having fun, I guess. So that's fine for me. This time around, though, I started off kind of acquiring this army on a budget for the most part. Even though the plan, if I got back into this hobby and I sold the original Tyranids off, was to get most of my stuff brand new, which I have. I bought that holiday box and got that was the Northern Emissary, the Hive Tyrant, the 10 Gene Stealers, the 20 Hormigons, and there might have been something else in that box. I don't remember. I got that one plus the Leviathan half, and then I also got like an extra Screamer Killer and a couple extra Psychophages because they were so cheap on eBay. So I did that whole bit, which got me a really good start into Tyranids, which I think probably a lot of people end up doing at one point or another. And then after that, I slowly acquired more things. Like I had a list that I built with the idea of kind of like comp, like I mentioned earlier, where I wanted to like have like one of like everything. But I wanted to steer away from things that I had a lot of in like 5th and 6th edition. So like I had a lot of Carnifexes. So I'm like, all right, let's hold off on Carnifexes for now, despite the channel or the episode name. Eventually we'll get some Carnifexes here, but I used to run 6 Carnifexes, so I was like, all right, let's not get a Carnifex. I have to get a Hive Tyrant. Okay. Lictors I used to try and run and make them work, even though they were garbage back in the day. Now they're good, so let's buy Lictors. I only had Exocrines for a short time. I only used them for a little bit. I don't think I ever used them in a tournament, so that wasn't a big deal for me to buy like an Exocrine again. I never put a Haruspex together. I never put a Carnifex together before I did the Turbogon instead, because the Turbogon was so good in like 5th or 6th edition whenever it came out. Right now it seems okay. Maybe eventually it'll be really good again here, but so yeah, I did some of those. The Gargoyles, still the same old Gargoyles. I thought I was gonna hate putting them together, not so bad. I am really excited for the new Raveners that are coming. So yeah, it looks out. What was the other new models too? Like the Norn's fantastic. I wish it was a little bit bigger, but awesome new model. Plus the Psychophage and Screamer Killer. Like all the new stuff is so cool looking. The new Biovore and Pyrovore looks so good. Like Tyranids are in a really good spot. Like I feel like model range wise, some things could definitely use some better rules or like have a better function in the army, so they're actually like you actually want to use them. But I feel like there's still like really good diversity in the codex for the most part too. There's a lot of really good options how to play them. There's a lot of different good play styles in this edition too, with how the detachments works and the battle forces and all that. Because they used to be a lot different. I would say in this edition too, like your macro choices for your army are so important. Back in the day, it used to be like, oh, do I want this squad to have all the grenades? Do I want this squad to have like this upgrade? Does this commander need this armor or this armor? Or does he need this weapon or this weapon? Does my heavy weapon unit need this weapon, but this one costs more, where this one's a little bit cheaper but has a slightly different role? Like, you're not making those decisions much. It's like, hey, I want this anti-tank weapon, I want this anti-vehicle weapon, or this anti-infantry unit, blah, 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 blah. I don't have to worry about the points between the different weapon choices now. I just take what I need. Which I think is cool. I'm sure some people don't like it. They like that number crunch with like their army building, but I think now the crunch comes more with like picking like your right attachment and then managing your CP and making those big macro choices for your army more so. Oh, pardon me there. I think it's just like such a huge deal with all your macro options now compared to before. Because you used to manipulate the force organization chart, you don't have to do that anymore because you don't have to run troops or battle line. You're not restricted as much. You just can't run more than three of the same thing or three of the same unit unless it's battle line. You can run six of the same. It's like you have so much freedom with how to build your force now. It's so cool. It's so amazing. But so I got into this hobby pretty hard. I was sitting on some models for a while, kind of put together, worked out a paint scheme. I got my paint scheme based off of a recipe from How Not to Paint, which I'll have to put a link in the bottom here of the video. Really awesome painting blog, fantastic recipes. This person's like a legit artist. Comes up with these awesome recipes for like contrast-based painting, and then the colors, the highlight and layer over top of it, and it's just really awesome. I took one of their schemes they used for Sylvaneth because I wanted to do white for my army because white's just like it was like one of those colors that's more challenging to paint in my mind, and I wanted to do these Tyranids like painted way better than before with actual like layering and like painting a harder color like white or yellow. So I went with white. So I feel like yellow's kind of hard to work sometimes, and then I'm gonna go with that blue because it just contrasted really nice. And honestly, I love how everything's turned out. I love the paint scheme. I think it's turned out great. I still question myself when I'm layering things because sometimes I just feel like I'm not doing it right or I could be doing it better, but it just comes with practice and getting used to it and the confidence of just doing it over and over and over again. Although when people see my army, I usually compliments on the blue, which is great. The blue looks great. Don't get me wrong. The blue is so much easier to do than the white that it hurts a little at the same time. I'm not gonna lie. That's okay. People like that, but like, and just the fact that people are like, man, it looks really good. The blue is fantastic. It's like, thanks, thank you. I'm so glad you think they look really good. No one compliments with the purple on my weapons either, which was the original. I was gonna do that purple instead of the white for the under carapace, but anyways, it's always the blue. People just like blue though in general, I think. So hey, but locally here, we used to have like one shop that has like tables for tournament or for playing Warhammer. It's not like a huge shop. It's kind of a smaller one. I don't know how much of a community they really had. And then more recently, we got a corporate store here nearby, but they don't really. I don't know if you can go there and play 2,000 point games, but they don't really have like, hey, come play here type thing. It's like small games, I think mostly only, and they're not gonna hold events or anything like that. So I decided to check out every game shop between where I live currently and Austin. Because I'm here in Texas now, like Central Texas. I'm right in between all the major cities. So I looked up some. There was a ton of them. I went and checked out a bunch of them. I think one day I checked out like 6 or 7 game shops, starting at like 40 minutes away to like an hour away, and then I ended up at like Round Rock, and then in Austin. It's all kinds of awesome ones, including like Dragon's Lair in Austin. Some of the like Dragon's Lair was actually holding a like GT for Age of Sigmar that day when I happened to go in their 2-day event they do once a year. One of the other stores was holding a 40K tournament when I was there. So it was just fantastic. A lot of awesome stores, a lot of great communities, a lot of events. And I'm not opposed to driving, which we'll talk about a little bit more later here when it comes to playing Warhammer, especially for a tournament. So there's so many places around that I can literally do a different tournament every weekend. And sometimes one Saturday and Sunday, if I really wanted to. Now, the following weekend, I did the same thing but going towards Dallas. And Dallas has the Warhammer Cafe, and there's only a couple of them in the world. I think there's only like maybe one other in the United States. I think there's like one in Europe, and I think one in Japan. Maybe there's not too many. I'm not sure where all the locations are, but it's awesome. I guess the North America headquarters for Games Workshop is in Dallas, or just outside Dallas. So that's why they have a cafe there, and especially if you're like a longtime Warhammer fan, it's really freaking awesome. They have all these rounds everywhere. They have some like a lot of the old like codexes and the covers for them. Some of like the really old miniatures and armies from like the 80s and the early 90s and the mid 90s. Um, some of like the different like special edition stuff they've done over the years. They have huge walls of like all the different miniatures that are currently available, including Forge World stuff, and then like all the Forge World Primarchs that are painted up. And they had like all the current models, and then even like some of like all the specialty games and everything. And they have all these like huge, fantastic, amazing, beautiful tables to play on. Because usually corporate stores only have like three tables, like I said. This one has like a dozen or so, and some of them have permanently built terrain on them, like cityscapes, and some of them just have like, like the modular terrain, but they're all absolutely stunning. They're amazing. They hold like not competitive events there, but they hold like gaming events every so often. They have like little events. Some people just go there and play casually as well here. They even had like a chessboard set up where that was all like for like different space marine models representing all the different pieces. They had like full size like bolters and chain swords and all kinds of decorations. And then, of course, a coffee shop where you can get an Exterminatus latte, which I did, of course, because we have to. I haven't made my way towards Houston yet. There's quite a few game shops there. There's a lot of events there. And we have this fantastic thing nowadays called Best Coast Pairings, which certainly was not a thing when I was in this hobby before. I just go on there and search out events within, however many miles of my location and kind of go from there. And like I said, I am not opposed to driving for events and games. So I think I played 4 games of 10th edition. Um, my first game against a top player, where I learned crisis suits for vehicles, which is really weird. Kind of got that's when I learned I can't move through ruins and walls with my monster. Well, walls I assumed, so I can't move through ruins with monsters or vehicles. That was a fun one to learn and get used to still. Then was I think my second game was a Chaos Space Marine player. My third game was against a regular Space Marine player. My fourth game was against an Imperial Guard player. And then, at this point, mind you, my army's already painted. The bases aren't done yet, and I signed up for my first tournament. Going in, first game of the day is my 5th game of 10th edition ever. Where I studied as best I could to be as quick as possible. And it was a great store. It's only about 40 minutes away. It wasn't a super long drive for this one. I go in expecting School of Hard Knocks. I expect to lose. I expect to learn, though. That's my main intention, is to have fun and to learn and get the rules down and to get used to the army and how the current edition really plays. Even if I don't perform well, it's okay. We're just do our best. I know the Norn can take a bunch of bullets. I know I can tank. I know I'm just not just going to hand them the victory points. Okay, they're going to have to earn them still. And they did. They did. I lost every game. But people still had to work for it a little bit here. I didn't just hand it over. But I learned a lot. I got the game down pretty well on that day. The following week, I went to another event about an hour away, ran by the same group. They hold a GT once a year every summer, which I'm planning on going to this summer, actually. I should have everything done way before that. But regardless, I went to that one. Had 3 more games, lost them all again. Kind of expected it. Took actual last place, got the dice prize. Got like a nice little bronze space marine too to commemorate it. But again, I learned a lot. I had a lot of fun. It was a great time. Great shop, great tables, great people. And I just learn more, get it down faster, get my turns down faster, and just keep improving, getting better and better. So that's the goal. I know it's gonna take a little while. It's the game's a little bit more streamlined than it used to be, but still complicated. There's still a lot to do. There's still a lot of nuances. And then this past Friday night, well, I guess technically it was Saturday, it was after midnight. About 12:30 at night, I decided I'm going to go to a tournament in San Antonio. I was debating between there and one in Tyler, Texas, which is about 2.5 hours away. San Antonio is more like 3. But it had a bigger turnout. Both stores looked awesome, don't get me wrong. I still want to go to the one in Tyler eventually here. But yeah, we drove to San Antonio. Went to sleep at about 1. Woke up at 5:45 in the morning, was on the road by 6. Um, was there on time, found the tournament. It was like 32 people. Overall, it's a little bit bigger than the other ones I went to. Great turnout, great group, awesome tables, great terrain, great location. Like inside a mall next to a food court with like all kinds of food, coffee, and bathrooms nearby. It's best thing you can hope for a tournament. Plus, a lot of the stores in the mall are very nerdy or geek themed, or horror and goth themed, and it was absolutely fantastic. I loved it. It's a really cool little mall. I won one game that day. I got to play Custodians my first time as well. Never seen them before in person. So that was cool. Got to play again. Got tabled for the first time in this edition. Did table my final opponent though, technically. Um, but that was my only win, you know. Won a random door prize of $20 in store credit, which is fantastic. So bought a Broodlord to strengthen my forces. And like I said, got the game down even further, learned about some other awesome game shops in like the San Antonio area. Because I'm a psychopath and I will drive 3 hours for a game for an all-day event. Learned about some more GTs that are in Texas, because for some reason Texas, especially when you're going the drive and you happen to be in the middle of all the major cities, there's a lot of options for going to tournaments and grand tournaments throughout the year. It's crazy. Like I said, I can basically do a tournament every Saturday for sure, and almost every Sunday if I wanted to here. So, we're gonna do as many as we can. I usually play Pathfinder on Sundays, so Sunday tournaments are usually out of the question. But Saturdays if I get off from work, they're a really good possibility. I'm gonna do as many as I can. I think the goal is like 2 or 3 a month, pending work. I know there's gonna be some weekends in May I can't do tournaments, but that's okay. I'll make some monies. I work as a server, so Saturday's a good day a pretty terrible day to give up in that industry, but I do enjoy my hobbies, so like I said, we're diving full into the hobbies, even doing some content creation around it, so I think this is gonna wrap me up for today for this one here. We'll get the first one out early. Hoping to do most of these like 20 to 30 plus minutes. We'll see how long they start running depending on how much I get into a topic or a discussion here. And like I said, this is kind of raw right now here. I'll figure this out more as I go. But thank you for hearing me out. Thank you for chilling. And that's Jinx signing us off too. You'll have a good one.